What if I told you that the most ferocious heavyweight champion who ever lived, a man who terrified opponents before the first bell even rang, was not born but built? What if I told you that the monster, the myth, the legend known as Iron Mike Tyson was the product of a secret code? A set of rules and rituals so strange, so extreme, they defy belief. You may have heard about his early morning runs or his intense training, but that's not the code. That's the surface. The real transformation, the alchemy that turned a broken kid from Brownsville into a global icon, lies buried in habits most people have never heard of. Habits that are bizarre, obsessive, and at times almost mystical. Today, we're going deeper than ever before. 25 habits that constructed his mind, shattered his demons, and then rebuilt him from the ashes of his own destruction. Forget what you think you know. Because the last secret on this list is so profound, it will change the way you look at human transformation forever.
Put your mother in the straight jacket, you punk-ass white boy. Come in and tell me that you and your punk white boy.
Chapter 1. The Ritual of Hypnosis. Before he was a champion, he was a project. Mike Tyson's legendary trainer, Cus D'Amato, didn't just train his body, he hijacked his mind. Every night, Cus would put a young, impressionable Tyson into a state of hypnosis. In the darkness of their home in the Catskills, Cus's voice would become Mike's inner monologue, repeating the same affirmations over and over again. You are the heavyweight champion of the world. You are a god of war. No one can defeat you. This wasn't just positive thinking. It was psychological programming. Cus was embedding an identity of invincibility directly into Tyson's subconscious, bypassing the fear and self-doubt that plagued him as a child. Before Tyson ever believed in himself, Cus D'Amato's hypnotic belief became his reality. This nightly ritual was the foundation, the operating system for the killer instinct that would later define him. Chapter 2. Waking up while the devil sleeps. You've heard he woke up early, but you probably don't know why. The 4 a.m. wake-up call wasn't about getting a head start. It was a declaration of war on his own weakness. Tyson said he did it because he knew the other guy, his opponent, wasn't doing it. While the world slept, Tyson was out on the cold, dark roads running for miles. He called it outworking the devil. The habit wasn't just about cardiovascular endurance, it was about psychological dominance. Each footstep in the pre-dawn silence was a reminder that he was willing to go to darker places than anyone else. By the time the sun rose, he had already won the first and most important fight of the day, the one against the man he was yesterday. Chapter 3. Forging an iron neck. Look at any picture of prime Mike Tyson. The most unnerving feature isn't his fists, it's his neck. It was a colossal 20 inches as thick as some men's thighs. This wasn't a genetic gift, it was the result of a bizarre and brutal daily habit: neck bridges. For 30 minutes every day, Tyson would lie on his back and bridge his entire body weight up onto the crown of his head, rolling back and forth on the canvas. This exercise is so dangerous, it's shunned by most modern trainers. But for Tyson, it was essential. A strong neck allowed him to absorb the concussive force of a heavyweight's punch without getting knocked out. It was his biological shock absorber, the secret armor that allowed him to walk through his opponent's fire to deliver his own. Chapter 4. Studying the ghosts of boxing. Mike Tyson didn't just train his body, he downloaded the souls of forgotten fighters. Cus D'Amato's house contained the world's largest collection of fight films, and Mike's homework was to watch them for hours every day. But he wasn't just watching Ali and Frazier. Cus had him studying dusty black and white reels of fighters from the 20s and 30s, men like Harry Greb and Mickey Walker. He learned the footwork of one, the defensive angles of another. He was building his style from a library of ghosts. This habit of obsessive study gave him a boxing IQ that was light years ahead of his peers. He wasn't just a brawler, he was a historian, armed with the forgotten knowledge of the sport's most brutal pioneers. Chapter 5. Weaponizing His Lisp. From a young age, Mike Tyson was bullied relentlessly for his high-pitched voice and his lisp. It was a source of deep shame and insecurity. But in the world Cus D'Amato was building, every weakness had to become a weapon. Instead of trying to fix his voice, Tyson learned to lean into it. The habit became one of psychological contrast. Opponents and journalists expected a deep, menacing growl. Instead, they got a soft-spoken, lisping voice delivering promises of brutal violence. The disconnect was deeply unsettling. It made him unpredictable, alien, and even more terrifying. His voice became a signature part of his intimidating aura, a habit of turning a perceived flaw into a psychological advantage. Chapter 6. The 500-Rep Bodyweight Furnace. Every single day, without fail, Tyson's body went through the same ritualistic furnace. 2,000 sit-ups, 500 push-ups, 500 dips, 500 shrugs, and 30 minutes of neck bridges. This wasn't a workout spread throughout the day. It was a concentrated 2-hour crucible of pain. The habit was more about mental conditioning than muscle building. By pushing his body to the same extreme limit every day, he was hardening his mind against the temptation to quit. He was teaching himself that pain was a signal to push harder, not to back down. This daily ritual is what built the engine for his relentless, non-stop punching style. His opponents would tire, but Tyson's furnace never ran out of fuel. Chapter 7. The Habit of Total Isolation. For 2 years leading up to his first championship, Mike Tyson practiced extreme celibacy and social isolation. Cus D'Amato believed that any distraction, especially women, would drain the aggressive energy he needed to become a killer in the ring. Tyson was effectively a monk in boxing gloves. His entire world shrunk to the 4 corners of the gym and the house in Catskill. No parties, no girlfriends, no life outside of boxing. This habit of complete focus created an immense well of pent-up ferocity. When he was finally unleashed in the ring, all of that contained energy exploded in a fury that his opponents were simply unprepared to handle. He wasn't just fighting for a title, he was fighting for release. Chapter 8. Devouring History and Philosophy. While the world saw a savage, the private Mike Tyson was consuming books at a ferocious pace. This was a habit he developed in juvenile detention and continued throughout his life. But he wasn't reading novels. He was reading about conquerors and thinkers. He devoured Machiavelli's The Prince, the works of Tolstoy, and the campaigns of Alexander the Great. He was searching for a blueprint for greatness and a language for his own internal chaos. This habit gave him a perspective far beyond the ring. He saw his career as a military campaign and his opponents as obstacles in a historical drama. It was this hidden intellectual life that allowed him to understand strategy, power, and the nature of fear on a level most athletes could never comprehend. Chapter 9. The Daily Call to Camille. After Cus D'Amato died in 1985, a crucial pillar of Tyson's life was gone. To keep that connection alive, he developed a new private habit. Almost every day he would call Camille Ewald, Cus's companion who had become his surrogate mother. It was his anchor to the values and discipline Cus had instilled in him. This habit was his attempt to stay tethered to the man who built him. On those calls, he wasn't Iron Mike. He was just Mike, a young man seeking guidance and stability in a world that was quickly spiraling into chaos and fame. It was a ritual of humility and remembrance, a secret lifeline to the principles that made him. Chapter 10. Visualizing Brutal Victory. This was more than just positive thinking. It was a form of mental torture for his opponents. Tyson wouldn't just visualize winning. He would sit in darkness and mentally rehearse the fight in gruesome detail. He pictured his fist landing, his opponent's nose breaking, the look of fear in their eyes as they fell. He ran these brutal scenarios through his mind so many times that by the time he walked to the ring, the fight was already a memory. It was preordained. This habit of violent meditation is why he often seemed to have no fear or doubt. In his mind, the outcome was already decided, and all that was left was to act out the brutal script he had written. Chapter 11. The Art of Tending Pigeons. This is perhaps the most famous and misunderstood habit of Mike Tyson's life. From his troubled childhood on the rooftops of Brooklyn to his quiet retirement, Tyson has always kept pigeons. This isn't a hobby, it's a form of therapy. The birds were the first thing he ever loved, the only beings that never judged him. The habit of caring for them is a ritual of gentleness that stands in stark contrast to the violence of his profession. On the roof, surrounded by his flock, the ferocious champion disappears. He becomes a tender, focused caregiver. This practice gave him an escape, a connection to a world of grace and loyalty that the human world rarely offered. It was the secret habit that preserved a small piece of his humanity when the Iron Mike persona threatened to consume him completely. Chapter 12. Embracing Punishing Sparring. Tyson's gym wars are legendary. While other champions would use sparring to sharpen technique, Tyson used it as a tool for destruction. His sparring partners were paid high salaries for one reason: to try and take his head off every single day. He demanded they come at him with everything they had. The habit was simple: make the gym 10 times harder than any real fight could ever be. He believed in forging himself in the hottest possible fire. By enduring this daily punishment, he became desensitized to pain and chaos. When he stepped into the ring for a real fight, it felt like a vacation. The pressure, the violence, it was nothing compared to the hell he had just left in the gym. Chapter 13. The Habit of Reckless Spending and Breaking It. For years, Tyson had a habit more destructive than any opponent. He treated money like it was infinite. He bought mansions, fleets of luxury cars, and famously, 2 Bengal tigers. This wasn't just spending, it was a compulsive habit rooted in a deep-seated poverty mindset. He believed he had to spend it all before someone took it away. This habit led him to bankruptcy, a loss of over $400 million. The transformation came when he was forced to break this cycle. He had to develop the new, painful habit of financial discipline. Learning to live modestly, to respect money, and to budget was a fight harder than any he faced in the ring. It was a battle for his future, and breaking this one habit was essential for his long-term survival. Chapter 14. Caring for Apex Predators. Why would a man buy Bengal tigers? It wasn't just a rich guy flex. The habit of owning and trying to care for these massive predators was a reflection of his own self-image. Tyson saw himself as a savage beast, an untamable force. He believed that by controlling these animals, he could somehow understand and control the beast within himself. Of course, it was a foolish and dangerous habit. He eventually had to give up the tigers, admitting you can't domesticate a wild animal. But the lesson was profound. It forced him to confront the fact that his own inner beast couldn't be controlled through force or domination, but had to be understood and tamed through other means. Chapter 15. Mastering the Science of Fear. Q's D'Amato taught Tyson that fear was like fire. It could burn you down, or you could use it to heat your home. Tyson's habit was to confront his fear every single day. He would admit to himself, "I'm scared of this man. He could hurt me." But then he would walk directly into that fear. He learned to harness the nervous energy, the adrenaline, and channel it into explosive power. He also became a master at projecting fear onto others. His ring walk, his stare, the lack of a robe. It was all a calculated performance designed to magnify his opponent's fear while he controlled his own. He didn't eliminate fear. He weaponized it. Chapter 16. The Shock of Veganism. In his later years, struggling with addiction, obesity, and poor health, Tyson adopted a habit that seemed impossible for a man of his appetites. He became a vegan. This wasn't a casual diet. It was a radical act of purification. He cut out all meat, dairy, and eggs. He credits this habit with saving his life. It was a way of cleansing his body of the years of abuse and excess. It taught him a new form of discipline, one centered on health and restraint rather than aggression and power. The transformation was stunning. He lost over 100 pounds and spoke with a new clarity. The vegan habit was proof that the man who once lived on steak and destruction could find strength in broccoli and discipline. Chapter 17. The Habit of Brutal Honesty. With his podcast, Hotboxin' with Mike Tyson, he developed a new, terrifying habit: radical honesty. On the show, Tyson strips away all artifice. He cries on camera, admits his deepest regrets, and confesses his darkest thoughts. He talks about his bankruptcies, his addictions, and his feelings of worthlessness with a vulnerability that is shocking to witness. This habit of public confession is his new form of therapy. By putting all of his failures on the table, he robs them of their power over him. It's a stark contrast to the intimidating, silent persona of his youth. This practice has become the cornerstone of his modern identity, a man who finds strength not in hiding his scars, but in showing them to the world. Chapter 18. Finding Humility in Destruction. Losing to Buster Douglas wasn't just a defeat, it was the destruction of an invincible myth. For Tyson, the aftermath forced him to develop a habit he had never needed before: humility. In that one night, he learned that he was not a god, but a man who could be broken. This lesson was reinforced by his time in prison and his subsequent losses. He had to learn to live as a mortal. This painful habit of accepting defeat allowed him to eventually rebuild his life. Without the crushing weight of being the baddest man on the planet, he was free to become something more: a human being. Chapter 19, The Poison That Healed, Toad Venom. This is by far Tyson's most absurd and profound habit. Seeking a final definitive break from the demon that had haunted him his whole life, Tyson began experimenting with the venom of the Sonoran desert toad. The psychedelic substance, 5-MeO-DMT, induces a short, overwhelmingly intense trip. Tyson describes the experience as an ego death. He says the toad venom killed the entitled, arrogant part of his personality that had caused him so much pain. This wasn't a recreational habit, it was a spiritual exorcism. He claims this bizarre ritual finally gave him the peace and self-acceptance he had been chasing his entire life, allowing him to finally conquer the monster within. Chapter 20, The Practice of Public Apology. For decades, Mike Tyson was a man who never apologized, but in his later years, he has made a conscious habit of owning his mistakes and seeking forgiveness. He has publicly apologized to opponents he disrespected, to journalists he threatened, and to women he has hurt. This isn't an easy habit for a man with his pride. Each apology is a small act of killing his old self. It is a deliberate practice of humility and accountability. This habit is central to his redemption arc, showing that he is actively working to repair the damage he caused and to build a new legacy based on peace rather than destruction. Chapter 21, Channeling Ancestral Warriors. Tyson's mindset went beyond just boxing. He developed a habit of seeing himself as part of a long lineage of great warriors. He didn't just study boxers, he studied conquerors like Genghis Khan and Achilles. He would try to tap into their ruthlessness and their single-minded pursuit of victory. Before a fight, he would tell himself he was a vessel for these ancient, violent spirits. This wasn't just a gimmick. It was a way of depersonalizing the violence. It wasn't Mike Tyson hurting someone. It was the spirit of the warrior acting through him. This mental habit allowed him to access a level of ferocity that was primal and terrifying. Chapter 22, The Cus D'Amato Mind Meld. Even after Cus was gone, Tyson's most deeply ingrained habit was thinking like him. When faced with a decision or a moment of doubt, he would actively ask himself, what would Cus do? What would Cus say? He had so thoroughly absorbed his mentor's philosophy that he could run a Cus D'Amato simulation in his own head. This mental habit was his compass. It guided his training, his fight strategy, and his attempts to stay disciplined. He essentially internalized his creator. This deep-seated practice is a testament to the profound impact of their relationship. Tyson was not just trained by Cus. He was, in a very real sense, inhabited by him. Chapter 23, Mastering the One-Man Show. To reclaim his own narrative, Mike Tyson took on one of his most daunting challenges: a one-man Broadway show directed by Spike Lee. The habit he had to learn was storytelling. Every night, he had to get on stage and relive his most traumatic, triumphant, and shameful moments in front of a live audience. This was a terrifying exercise in vulnerability. But the habit of crafting and telling his own story allowed him to finally make sense of his chaotic life. He was no longer just the subject of headlines. He was the author of his own epic. This practice was crucial in transforming him from a myth into a man. Chapter 24, Redefining Fatherhood. For much of his life, Tyson was an absent or chaotic father. His greatest transformation arguably came after the tragic death of his 4-year-old daughter, Exodus. That unspeakable pain forced him to confront his role as a parent and develop new habits of presence, patience, and love. He dedicated himself to being a stable force for his other children. The habit of showing up for school events, for conversations, for quiet moments became his new priority. This wasn't about being a champion or a celebrity. It was about the quiet, consistent work of being a dad. This habit gave him a purpose beyond himself and became the cornerstone of his new, stable life. Chapter 25, The Daily Confrontation with the Ego. The final and perhaps most important habit in Tyson's modern life is the daily practice of checking his own ego. He has acknowledged that his ego is the demon responsible for his greatest failures. Now, he He actively works to starve it. He does this through self-deprecating humor, through listening more than he talks, through his brutally honest podcast, and through his psychedelic-assisted spiritual work. Every day, he makes a conscious choice not to be Iron Mike. He chooses to be Mike, the man. This ongoing, moment-to-moment habit is the ultimate fight of his life, not against another man in a ring, but against the destructive pride that lives within him. And in winning this quiet, daily battle, he has achieved the one thing that eluded him his entire career: peace. 25 habits, a code for building a monster, and then a manual for dismantling him. Mike Tyson's life is the ultimate proof that we are not fixed beings. We are a collection of our rituals. Change the rituals, and you change the man. From hypnotic programming and brutal discipline to Toad Venom and public apology, his journey is a brutal, bizarre, and ultimately hopeful map of human transformation. The question is not whether you can be like Mike Tyson. The question is, what is the code you are living by right now? And who could you become if you had the courage to rewrite it? Watch this video if you're ready to be in control instead of your emotions.